Welcome to my podcast or show. I still haven't figured out what I'm gonna call this thing yet. It's Hey, what did I miss? Hey, Coach Cam, salute. Joining me, special guest, my brother from another, Mr. K, Mr. Jean Christophe. How you say that? Jean Christophe. How you say that? Say it for me.
Uh,
Say it for me. Say it for me.
Jean-Christophe Louis Monsano.
Yeah, all those names. But to me, and to everybody else who knows him and loves him, it's just Mr. K. He's been a guidance counselor for 3 years now, and he's been so kind to step on with us to talk about men's emotional and mental health briefly. Trying to make a series of helpful videos for everybody. Everybody needs just to sometimes hear a different approach or be reminded of certain things, and I think this is definitely important. Mr. K and I, once in a while, we try to stop in at least once a week just to, say lay some thoughts and
Yeah.
on each other, give some words to encouragement, and we take that time. And I thought of him when I had the idea to actually have this topic. So thanks for coming on, taking the time. Appreciate you as always in the work you do with our children.
Thank you.
First off, I want to just there's such a big stigma that goes on with men's mental and emotional health. What is that about exactly? What goes on? What is that stigma that's held over a lot of men's heads? When talking about this particular topic.
I mean, a lot of it is societal. A lot of it is societal, but it's also cultural. What you end up looking at when it comes to society and having men to talk about their feelings. When it comes to men talking about their feelings, with a lot of cultures and a lot of societies, it's seen as not being masculine enough, because the way we're supposed to express what we're going through is through fighting. It's through looking as aggressive as possible and looking as masculine as possible. But to sit down to have a conversation about what's going on with us, because it's seen as feminine, a lot of times when it's abandoning now, the way that it's translated to a lot of people is that they either avoid it completely, or when they do try to attempt to talk about it, because they're put down so much, they end up not talking about it at all. I can tell you honestly, even with my own family, growing up, when there would be times where I wanted to have that conversation with my family. I grew up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. My family is Haitian, and having that conversation with them, where I remember in college where I was unhappy because I was pursuing a career that my family wanted for me.
Mm.
It was engineering. And there would be times where I would come home late, and my mother would just say, "Man up." And that was something that my brother also heard. But when it came to my cousins or any other of the women in my family, they would have a conversation with them, sit down with them, see what's going on with them. So as a result, in our 30s now, the women in my family are more emotionally mature than the men are.
Mm.
And that's something that we're trying to change a lot now. Like my sister, she's finds a way now to put it into our conversations in our group chats, where and the thing is, the stigma you're talking about, it's so embedded and ingrained in us that at some point in the group chat, she said "I love you" to all of us, and my brother and I automatically thought that something was wrong with her. Like that
Mm.
mere process of saying this, I thought it was something that was mostly that was in Haiti. But what I kept noticing over and over again is that this was something that was more prevalent in the Black community, and especially with Black men. Like we're not taught how to say "I love you" to one another. Like it's become such an insecurity that we feel the need to add at the end, "I love you, man." Like we have to add that extra bit, or sometimes we won't even say the "I." So sometimes it'll be "I love you, man," or just "love you," or like this thing, and it's done so quickly and so suddenly. It's like, oh wait, yeah, I said it. All right, I covered that ground. We can move on to the next topic now. When you sit down with a lot of men individually, like I can use my brother for example, where a lot of his friends, I met him and a bunch of his friends in Boston a couple of years ago. And what kept happening is when we were all together, it was like, "Hey, what's up?" Like drinking and all that stuff, like having fun. But then there would be moments where I would have a moment with just one of them. Almost all of them were going through the same things emotionally. But when I asked him that same question at the end, I said, do you all talk to one another about this?" And then they all said no. But me being an outsider, I kind of became that kind of like that buffer to be able to have that conversation with me. But it was interesting to see that none of them all of them were going, they all went to the same school, yet all of them were having these conversations with one another, with one another, but no one was having deep conversations about what was going on with them emotionally, even though all of them were sharing the same thing. So we end up hurting each other a lot because we're not giving each other the chance to
Right.
really know each other to that level.
Right. 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 Yeah. So it's along those lines of right. We walk around. We have to keep this mask on. Right. We got to keep this mask on that everything is good. Nothing is bothering us, and we're handling our business.
Yeah.
When truthfully, we do a lot of thinking. I know me personally. It is very difficult for me to open up at times, and feel like in a way that I'm expressing myself with purpose, like
Right.
with meaning, and then even then it's kind of holding back what I really want to say and trying to play on words because you're thinking about the consequences. You never want to be seen as weak and things like that,
Right.
you know. And it's a work in progress,
Right.
every day, and something that I can admit out loud now, being a 38-year-old man, and I'm still struggling,
Right.
try to speak about my emotions. But I think definitely the first step is just admitting to the fact that we don't talk about it enough. Like we get worried, we get anxious, we get depressed, we overthink at times, but being comfortable enough to say that, out loud to somebody, and I think, with such the social backlash of it, it can be worrisome, it can be troublesome, because as a society, even though they say it's okay, you still we still feel the need to put your shield and guard up because it's just been so long. It's been ingrained.
Right.
It's like breaking any habit, right? But ultimately, shout out to my wife because she said this to me and she knows I'm a work of progress and I appreciate it. She said it, but ultimately, it is your choice.
Right.
You either want to break out of it or not. And I had to think about that in a minute. Not be all like, "Oh, yeah, but I had to think about it a little bit and like, what, to a certain, to an extent, and not even to an extent, she's right. Ultimately, you have to be willing to put in the work every day and just know that you're gonna stumble with it and things like that. So, with that being said, do you have any like strategies or ways that maybe guys can open up a little bit and just be okay, or you know?
So, like you said, the first step to is to acknowledge what the issue is. I think getting to be able to talk about what's going on is getting to talk about it is difficult. However, what ends up happening sometimes because we want to talk about once we realize that we want to talk about something, we end up doing too much where we end up overcompensating and then we end up realizing okay you're trying to cover all of them at the same time. I
Mm,
think the first step would be to at least first acknowledge one issue at a time and say
mm,
okay this is what it is I'm going through right now, and then
mm.
find a way to at least are you able to have the conversation with yourself first,
Yeah.
because
Oh.
before inviting somebody else in, it's also being first able to realize that okay this is what I can acknowledge, because a lot of times you can get the courage to talk to somebody else about it, but if you haven't dealt with it on your own or you are able to essentially get over that hurdle of denial, being open to talk to someone else may not result to anything because you also haven't been able to work on your own foundations.
Mm,
In addition, now that can also be a hurdle to be able to handle it on your own. So inviting somebody in, it can be somebody trustworthy. Now I know even if it's you may have married somebody, but that person may not be the closest person you're with.
mm,
So it's finding essentially who is that person that you know that you can trust to be able to open up, to be able to say, listen, this is what I've noticed these past couple of days that have been happening to me. I think I do need to talk to someone. So you can start with that one on one.
right.
Having that one on one can be able to help you find a way to let yourself be vulnerable. And I think that's where that aspect of, like you mentioned, the whole being weak,
Right.
like we don't even realize how much courage it actually takes us to be able to get to that point, because you're literally talking about admitting you have this notion of yourself. You have this notion that this is who I am. I am strong. I'm the protector. I'm the caregiver. I can't show weakness because then my family will see it.
Mhm.
But having that courage to let them realize that you also have those weaknesses, you also have those vulnerabilities, that you don't need to be this totem pole for them, that you can be each other's totem poles,
Yes.
that you all can stand with one another. And I think that first hurdle to be able to first pick a certain issue that you know is either the most pressing or that you want to address first,
Mhm.
working on yourself when it comes to talking about, okay, making sure that you're not in that denial phase, that you'll be able to let somebody else in.
Mhm.
And it's finding your go-to person. Like, who is the person that you know that you can open up to have this conversation? Now, I know myself growing up, it's I grew up surrounded by divorce. There was
Mhm.
I never actually saw love being shown to me physically. Like, I haven't seen it because all the people around me, I think the only person who was um, in a relationship growing up was my uncle, and when he married his wife. But even then, I never saw adults kissing. I never saw them holding hands. Like the stuff you would see in movies, I just didn't see it. So when I first started dating myself, I started realizing a lot of the things I was doing was, instead of looking for a solution to keep, like, instead of that, okay, this is what's happening, there's a cycle going on here, I just skipped out.
You
I
find a
just,
way to,
I,
yeah,
exactly, I just
find
kept
a way to
looking
stay
for
in the cycle, kept looking through it. Yeah, yeah,
exactly
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
until I met my husband.
Yeah.
And he was the one that he comes from a steady home, well, whatever that definition may be now.
Right.
Two parent household. Like his parents just celebrated like over 25 years of marriage,
Mhm.
and it was something I never saw. And he actually sat down with me and had the blunt and honest conversation with me to help me realize that. Do you notice you keep doing this? Do you notice that you keep skipping out every time things get rough? Like you don't want that challenge. And I
Right.
realized that every time taking on that challenge means I'd have to make myself vulnerable and make myself look weak. And that power that is essentially my identity, I had to let some of it go to let somebody else in to be in a successful relationship. Because I was sabotaging things myself because I was just saying that, well, I'm going to listen. I used to listen just to be right. I wasn't really
Mm.
listening to have a conversation
Mm.
with somebody else.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like that male ego, that, the culture I grew up in. So a lot of it is where, being allowing him to get in. And that took a while. It took a while. It's not, and that's something I want everyone to know also, that doing this, don't expect to get a result within a day or a week or a month. It's going to take some time. And what is important is finding a way to be patient with yourself, to allow yourself to grow. And that there's going to be those moments where you collapse. There's going to be those moments where you have your weakness really comes through. There's going to be those moments where it feels like you're failing. But it I think, like when Jeff, who works with us here, the what he loves to say is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
Don't expect to give this quick burst to get to a finish line. It's not. You're gonna keep going and going and going, and you're gonna take some breaks. You're gonna need that water break sometimes. You're gonna need to stretch. So all that is part of that process to be able to get to. It's not gonna be your full ideal self, but it's
Mhm.
gonna be a self that you can be happy with and that you can be proud of.
Awesome. Uh, wow. And I listened to you once you said self sabotage. I kind of was like, oh man, like you think you're doing everybody a favor by by being closed off. When in actuality, you're hurting everyone around you because there are people around you that really do care about you and want to see you successful. And it's just this wall that you have up. And sometimes you have a wall that you don't even know that is up. You just, you fall into your comfort zone in the different habits you have. And you just kind of like, I'm good. Is it? No, you're not.
No,
You're
you're
not
not.
good.
Right.
We see you're not good. What's up? Speak up.
Exactly.
And then, and,
And
and,
that's what you said there too, like being that friend. Like when you know, like they're saying that I'm good and they're not, address, like I'm not
address
supposed to
it.
push the person, but
Mhm.
don't let it go by,
Right.
because a lot of times then it just keeps piling up, and then
Uh,
you're going to get to a point where it's going to be too difficult to even approach it. But
mhm,
tackle it from the beginning, like
mhm.
set those norms and those and that narrative that it is consistent amongst your circle of friends, that
Mhm.
you know that this is what we talk about. We don't put things under the rug. Like, we address it, we talk about it, and and you know what, fully addressing every aspect of a relationship or a friend of a friendship, that's what makes it a relationship. Otherwise, it's codependency. You're just really standing time to each other because you both are trying to fill up a void with each other's company. But if you
Yeah.
have a full, meaningful friendship that has addressed everything together, you'll truly be friends or partners to one another.
Right. Man. Wow. That. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
thank
mean, that's
you.
a great. That's some great stuff. Uh, some tips I've been looking up. Just don't be afraid to approach somebody who you think is having problem opening up and things like that. Some people's skins are tougher than others. It is a process. You got to take time. And I would say trust that that person does care about you. You know, they just trying to, figure themselves out.
Yeah.
You touched on that too. How about, self care, being aware of self,
Hmm.
knowing about you and trusting you and trying to figure you out. And it's a process. It takes time. There are, like I said, people out there willing to help. Like I said, I know talking to you at least once a week, it's helpful, and I advise other people to do that. Just talk to somebody else, once a week. Just to sometimes you just need somebody to ground you. Your mind goes into different places, and sometimes you just need to say it out loud, and then you have that person just look at you crazy, like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's exactly
Right.
right."
Yeah.
I mean,
And you'd be surprised, like, you can reach those thresholds together, like
right,
you said, and like you and I do, like that quick check in, even if it's like that, the like joking about, like, on texts or video games or whatever it is that works for us.
right,
And we just like we've known each other for 3 years now, and
right.
I can honestly say that you and I have done a lot of work together. That it's still a struggle with some friends I've known a longer time, but
Yeah,
it's because I'm at a stage in my life now where I know more about mental health. I'm not in a place where it's stigmatized. Growing
right.
up in Haiti, it was never talked about. It
Right.
was just, and I realize a lot now that the people that my family used to, or the people around me, like the
Mhm.
one that they would say, "Oh, you see that one over there? Yeah, careful about that one. Don't stay away from him. Stay away from her."
Yeah.
I realize now that person just had mental health,
Right.
that they needed to that was not catered to.
Right. Right. So, real quick, I'm going to go over some signs real quick for people to look out for. If you see somebody struggling socially, they're having problems at work, change the sleeping patterns. That's me once a month. My sleeping pattern just like gets crazy. Excessive drinking, drug use, mood swings, thoughts about suicide and things like that. Look, there's help out there. Contact your doctor, friends and family. I guarantee somebody has at least one person in their life that they don't even know about to try to
NYC
talk
Well
to.
also.
Oh, say that again, please. Say that again.
NYC Well is another good resource that we have. Like, because I know with some people it might be because of family and friends that they're
Mhm.
afraid of. They prefer someone who's neutral.
Mhm.
So NYC Well is a good idea to start with there also.
No, this is not going to just be a one-off discussion. I think we're going to touch back on this, maybe get more into depth with different things. But I really like to make this like a more, constant thing. Maybe like once a month or twice a month, we just,
Yeah.
touch base on it.
Right.
This would be our way of touching base with the rest of you who are tuning in and watching. Mr. K, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your efforts. And as always, like I said, we're going to get back to this. And any resources, please reach out. And we will check on you guys
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you, Coach, especially for Mental Health Awareness Month this month.
Oh yes, definitely
Thank you so much
mental
for doing
mental
that.
health awareness month. Yeah, look at that. I did something good by accident on purpose by accident. Okay. All right. Be well.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.